And I'm just going to figure out what we're going to say. That okay? Very good. Well, secretly, I'm kind of happy that we're able to do this. We're having a board meeting this evening and talking about some of the things that are important to Silver Legislature, Kansas. And so I was secretly in the back of my head wishing that I had access to everybody ahead of that, so we would have more valuable input from the membership about where we want to go and how we want to get there, and are there ways that we can be effective that we're not using right now. And I'm come from the legislative world, 4 years down the street, under the dome, and that taught me that you can be influenced as a legislator and by various means and methods, but it's important if you want your voice heard to be able to say some things to that legislator that will grab their attention. And there are a couple ways that you can do that. One is by just showing up and making an appointment to visit that legislator. Any of us can do that. I can do that, but that route is open to almost everyone. And to express the needs of seniors. Now, in our particular case, speaker is the designated person to represent Silverhead Legislature. Everyone can go in and talk about things that are important to them, that concern seniors as well. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, and this is intriguing to me, and Jay alluded to it, and that is, these 650,000 people that are really diehard voters, they look forward to voting every year or 2 years, and we somehow could communicate with them that what our needs are, what our goals are as Silverhead Legislature, and how good a job are their representatives and senators doing working for them? How are their votes comparing with their revenue, in other words? So that's kind of got me scratching my head a little bit on how we can increase our effectiveness. The other thing that we can do is to, I went back and read the mission of Silverhead Legislature, and it's not near as complex or as involved as that. What they're trying to do, I'm sure he's trying to keep up with me here, I think, is to to engage seniors in the legislative process. So, we're gathering here in the state capitol, and we're going to visit the state house tomorrow. We're going to go through committee meetings, and we're going to go through a house session and maybe the gavel and all that sort of thing. And I think that originally the Silverhead Legislature function was to get seniors acquainted with the legislative process and to go through the motions of creating resolutions or bills and then presenting them, arguing in committee, and then passing them out of the chamber. Well, and then hopefully taking those resolutions to the legislature the following January and see what we can make happen with the legislature. And that's fine too. It's just a matter of how effective do we want to be with our work, with how we feel about stuff. We spent some time earlier this summer putting together our ideas for bills and resolutions, and we came up with a half dozen, and they're all good, and they're all worthy, and they're all, I would say, necessary. But then how willing are we to make that process happen, to get those resolutions into bill form, get them out of introduced in committee, out of committee, on into the chamber on general orders, above the line, you know, that whole gamut that our resolution bill has to go through in order to ultimately do us some good. So, with all that said, and you're going to be able to help me because, like I said, it's my first in-person meeting. I attended as an invited legislator the meetings through 17, 18, 19, I think. Ross invited me, Ross Bowling, and I thought that was great because it gives me an idea of what is important to seniors when I attended. It was always fun. I ended up purchasing something my last one at the silent auction items. Became part of the artwork. But anyway, that's good too. That's, you know, you want to increase and expand your audience as much as you can. And every time you include legislators, it's always a good thing. So what I would like to hear from you is what should our hopes and dreams be as the Silverhead Legislature, and what should we be doing to make those hopes and dreams happen? And okay, I'm going to pass this around. Or sure, yes.
I'm Darrell Wittenberg. I'm from your own BSA 8 in Ottawa County. But you said we need to do whatever we can to make these things happen. But my question is, once we finalize our proposed bills and resolutions, what is the process? What happens? Really get through this.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate that question. And I tell you what, up until 2019, or whenever we had to go undercover because of the pandemic, we were blessed with Don Woodward, who faithfully served the Silverhead Legislature by going virtually daily into the State House. He lived in Topeka, and he was willing to do this, and it was kind of his thing. He would go up. He knew how to testify in committee and express the wants and needs of the Silverhead Legislature to the committees. He was very effective in doing that. In fact, I think in 2010, he was helpful in getting a bill signed by the governor, ultimately, to help seniors. And so it can happen. But if you don't have Don forever, it's more complicated than that. And so there may be ways to deal with it. For instance, I know that I'm the designated person now to visit the State House and to testify in committees, introduce resolutions or bills if that becomes necessary. But I'm 114 miles away according to Google Maps, and so I can't have the same presence that Don did. And frankly, it does help to build relationships with legislators, even when you don't have a bill. Just going from committee room to committee room, you can just say hi, how are you doing, how are the kids, and all that kind of thing. So that's helpful, but it's not, even though it's more difficult now, it's not impossible. It's just, we just can't keep doing that at the same level. We'll have to find ways to monitor bills and the committee process in order to see when a bill might be heard. And then when it's heard, then they work the bill, and then determine the outcome of it, whether to send it to the chamber or not. But that's for our process, we have to get the resolutions that we have to find a legislator that is willing to sponsor a bill that includes that resolution, or that's similar, that's very similar to it, perhaps. And then to go to committee and ask that the bill be introduced. And then that's just the very start. Once it's introduced, then you have to talk to the chair of the committee and you know, that's where relationships work for you as well, in terms of getting the bill worked or heard first and then work. So once the committee chair agrees to set the bill up for a hearing, and that's when we would go in and testify on behalf of the bill and resolution and on behalf of Silver Legislature. And then 3 or 4 days later, the committee chair would determine whether or not that bill will be worked by the committee, and that's when the committee votes to either pass the bill out of committee or I would say 70% of the bills that are not in committee.
You're right.
Yes, sir.
You know, if you would explain to the delegates the benefits or the workings of a bill and a resolution, and you know how we can go about designing or presenting that. So as they go through their daily activities out in the community, you know, they'll know whether or not this should be considered a bill or resolution or the creation of a new bill.
Okay, thank you. All right. Resolutions or bills can be introduced in committee, and from my time, it seemed like that all of the resolutions, the resolutions are a lower form of legislation than a bill, and almost all of the time, a resolution will be folded into a bill form. And it will be, once the bill is, if you're able to do that, and that requires a member of the legislature to help with that. Or we
as silver-haired legislators, sometimes we refer to resolution number XYZ or bill XYZ. That's what I was saying, how it comes from the silver-haired legislators as our resolutions or our bills. What does that mean?
We would introduce, well, in fact, I would go to a committee meeting. And for instance, one of our medical cannabis, and that might be in the health committee on the House side. And I could introduce, that's a resolution. I could say we'd like to introduce resolution 4006 or whatever the number is for medical cannabis into the committee. And then that's an official process, but it's only the very beginnings of of that process. And then if it becomes a bill, then the bill is given a number. And the bills, we have a 2-year bill cycle. And every time there's an election, that starts a new 2-year cycle for a bill, so that the bills that are introduced in the first year can carry over to the second year. And at the end of the second year, all of those fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's dead. It can be reintroduced, and I did that with a bill I had for the income tax credit for the Eisenhower Foundation in Emily. And so that had to go over to a second cycle. And once it becomes bill form, then the committee can decide if they want to, how they want to go with it.
So would you say a resolution coming from the silver-haired legislators would be something like, we have a situation or a concern, and so the silver-haired legislative delegates are saying this is our solution for our resolution for this particular situation. And so therefore, when you're out to the community and you're speaking to your constituents, then you find out what the problem is. You know, our job is not to go out and try to talk about how we're going to resolve the problem. We want to know what the problem is. And at that point in time, we go back to our, area, our AAA, and we will tell them, and they will be able to designate whether it's gonna work or not. If we find that there is some type of legislation that is circumventing the issuance or the correction of the problem, that's where we come in and we come up with some type of a resolution, so to speak. And then at that point in time, at that resolution, we vote on it as a whole among ourselves. And then if it goes further, then it kind of goes into the field cycle that you were speaking about. I just kind of want to make that clear because sometimes, you know, when we don't understand what it is that we're doing, we get out and we make this a hard task, and it's not a hard task. We're here just to gather information and share it with our AAA, let them direct us because we're the supporting arm of the AAA. That's the way I understand it.
Right. And thanks for that, Tom. The other thing that we can do, and we haven't really been activists when it comes to legislation either, but we could probably, the other thing that we could do is to, once we have introduced, say, a resolution, then to have everybody be instructed to communicate with that committee chair. And in terms of, this is really important to seniors. We would like very much for you to have a hearing that includes our resolution.
Absolutely.
Hey, Hoffman,
Yeah.
how does the resolution actually become a bill?
Well, this is I'd have to clarify that myself with the revisor because we 99% of the time we've had resolutions that would be introduced on the floor of the chamber that bypass the committee process altogether. But most of the resolutions had to do with they would be introduced by a committee member or not committee legislators, and it would be things like our Alzheimer's Day or Alzheimer's Month or something like that. Those are the resolutions I'm more familiar with. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out the exact mechanism that is required, but there is a process. Otherwise, why do it? I just don't know the exact mechanics of how that. If they just take that information, because the information on resolution is more or less in bill format, and so there's not much anything that you would have to do. Well, I'll give you one other example. We have one resolution that concerns our AAAs and their tax exempt status. And I had a specific question about that resolution with the revisor, and the revisor told me that he said, you know what, we could make a bill out of that, but it may not have as good a chance at becoming law as if we kept it as a resolution, because with tax exempt status, each one has to be defined in the statutes of Kansas. And right now they're into, and everyone has a little number designation. Well, they use like a number and then 5 different letters, like 1.B.X. So there's like thousands of them. And he said that would probably not see the light of day if you introduced it as a bill. So there's a way of getting there, and we would figure out that way. And that part's not far.
Jay's trying to get your attention.
Yes, Jay.
Rightly or wrongly, one of the ways that we have looked at it in the past is if there is already a bill, then we would have as a resolution showing support for that bill.
Okay.
If there was no bill, like I know we did a grandparents' rights one time, and then also just recently that Senior Care Act restoration of funding, then we make that a bill. And so that's why we usually have 5 to 6 resolutions for every one bill, because if there's already something, we're just wanting to tack our support on to it. But I don't know that that's That's the correct way.
Yeah.
Which is what we did.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
Yep.
Yes,
Well, Jay, Don Bergwin, SA2 Public Policy. Jay partially answered the question a little bit, but I was wondering who at the executive board level or the leadership meeting level there in July decides what becomes a bill or what becomes a resolution, what criteria you use. The discussion you go through.
We started, as you all know, you had your DSA meeting. And what did we say we had this year, 52 or something like that? 67, we had a bunch of them. We had a, is it on? Okay, we had a bunch of them. Last year was the same way. I think we had 63 or something like that last year. Some years we haven't had that many. But we tried this year to bunch them by similar content. Because while they were 57 or whatever, different ones, they came down to what we figured about 13 different groups. And then that made it a whole lot easier to try to figure out what we wanted to do. And then we just talked about them and throw some out. And I know a couple cases we said that's best left for next year, those kind of things. And we whittled them down to, I think we had like 9 or 12 that we then voted on. And there was the 6 that we voted on stood out. They were a minimum of 4 to 6 votes each, whereas all of the rest of them were in the 1 and 2s. So that's the 6 that we went to. Now, to more directly assess it, we tried to look at it and talk about what's in here that maybe the legislature has already tackled. A great example of that was medicinal marijuana. Cannabis. 5 years they've been working on that. So there's no sense for us to try and write a bill. They've already got multitude of bills. So that automatically for us was a resolution. The AAA one did have a bill last year, the sales tax issue, AAA did have a bill last year that actually got passed out of committee favorably. But when it went to the chamber, it never got above the line. The leadership did not want to address that bill, and so it never got above the line, which is what it has to do before it could be worked on that out of the House, or Senate, or I don't know which one it is. So we talked about, and I think you even brought it up with the revisers, wasn't it, that could be a potential bill?
yeah, right.
But I think we eventually settled on it being a resolution.
I think it'll, see, in that case, I think it will turn out to be part of that bill, that it'll be reintroduced.
Yeah, I do too. And in my mind, evil as it is, to me, that they're equal weight. It's just a case, are we supporting somebody else that's already doing it, or are we making a major push ourselves? So that's, to me, is the big thing. But to me, they're both things we're trying to get through the legislature, whether we're the sponsoring agency or someone else is, and we're trying to help them. I don't think it matters.
But one other thing about resolution I just thought about is that, like I said, a resolution is mostly a bill anyway, in terms of the way it's written, the format. And so that if we introduce a resolution to a committee or talk to a committee member or chair outside of the committee process, even that resolution can easily take the format of a bill much more easily, because it's been researched, it's been gone through the revising process. 90% of the work is already done. And so I think it's a powerful document. It's much more powerful than me just taking a statement on letterhead to a committee and saying we propose this, or we're in favor of this. Okay.
Jim Payne, Miami County, ESA 7. Last spring, our delegates met over Kansas Day, the Capitol, we tried to visit all our legislators and senators. When we would bring up something of our resolutions and the one bill we had last year, their first question was, do you have a bill number to go with that? In other words, they wanted to know if there was a bill in a committee that they could sort of hang their hat on with our concern. And I was left, I don't know. So if point of information, is there a way for the senior head legislators to be informed that a bill is being considered by a committee, and that the committee members might be open to our calling them or visiting them and showing our support? Because a lot of times I don't know exactly how to maintain that, or I don't have time. Is there some way for us to be notified this resolution is being folded into this legislation in that committee now?
Thanks for that bringing that up too. I mean, it's it's always a moving target. We don't know, and some bills move a lot faster than other bills because of one reason or another. Usually there's a vested interest by a committee member that makes that happen. But there are services next to being a Don, walking across, going down to the printing room and get out the calendars and the journals and determine what bills are being worked that day in the House and Senate committees and on the floor. We'd have to rely on a service that would provide much of that same function. And really our whole process kind of rests on that ability to figure out if there's a bill, and like Jay mentioned, that like medical cannabis, we will probably not need a bill because there are 3 or 4 already floating around, and so we would just figure out what those bills are that already have a number, and then supply them to the legislators that are friendly to serving legislature in terms of these are the bills that we support, or this bill is what we support that would meet one of our goals. So,
and also, when Don was speaker, and I know he'll do the same thing. If there's one pressing, then they can contact me because I'm probably the only one that still has the list of everybody on my computer. And so if they, or also if our area agency director, Julie Gobert-Walter, she'll send out an urgent plea. And then I try and relay that on to everyone else. And Randall had a couple last year that way that I found out about it. So I tried to send it out to everybody. We do know we have an issue with some email addresses that if it's a big group email, their own server will not send it. They are not delivered, I guess. And so that hurts us, but we still get most of them through. And so as long as I can see it, I can relay that on to everyone else.
Alan Schmidt, Ellis County, PSA 3. I'm going to take it a little bit of a step forward into the future. We heard today that the MCOs, the CanCare, is up again for deliberation, whether it's going to continue. There's a lot of controversy with the insurance companies, the 3 insurance companies, how they came in. I was in the Senate on that committee when that happened, by the way, but they've come a long way and been able to, put some things together. But there is a possibility, and I don't think it's just slight, that system may go away when the contract comes up again. If that happens, we're looking at some real issues that we're going to have to deal with. You heard me before say that we're 70,000 people short of what we need in the field to serve the disability arena and including the aging, frail, elderly. I think number one, we need to support you in the legislature in the strongest way possible so that you're there as much as possible. I don't know if that's even conceivable, but if it is, we need to. I also heard that there's a coalition of 50 organizations that have a lot of similar issues that we do. And then I heard the 650,000 people that we could possibly represent, which is huge. If you're a politician and you've got a voting block, even 200,000 out there, you better pay attention. So in the legislature, number one, you need an advocate. You need somebody that's going to step up and go to the plate for you in the committee and then on the floor. We have, I know some, we got Carpenter, right? And the one who was supposed to be the speaker, Chuck Schmidt, is in the legislature. If he wins, he's going to be there and he'll be a strong voice. He has a minority party, so that will, temper that somewhat, but we need to find who those champions are up there. You probably already know. But more importantly, I think that we have evolved as an organization. We've done a tremendous job here as a volunteer organization, I think, getting things forward. I think it's time that we either need to link arms with somebody that we can have that constant advocacy and go forward even off season to the legislatures and build a momentum for the type of things that we're going to need to face the challenges we have in the near future. We already have, but in the near future. So what I'm advocating is that your executive committee sit down and talk about, we might need to hire somebody. And I don't know if that's possible because of how we would, legislate it into action as silver area legislatures, but I'm thinking we need a staff. You can't be effective at this level without some kind of a staff that is keeping us informed. Now we have AAA, but they can't advocate. They're not politically supposed to be involved, but they can be communication link for us, and they are for us out west, I can tell you that. So I ask you to really seriously consider this. How do we get the funding to move forward? There's two ways to do it. One of them is to get our own funding and move forward and create a staff. Now, I don't want to lose the grassroots. Telling you that power of this organization is the grassroots. It's us speaking up. But when you get to the level where you're going to the legislature, 10 resolutions sometimes isn't going to get it. You got to hone in and, like you said, get right after somebody creating a bill. They're doing it all the time. The legislative, what's it called, services, research branch.
Yeah.
They write bills for somebody, for a rep or a senator. You can go down to them and say, please write this up in legal terms to do it. So all those things are available. If we can't hire a staff ourselves, let's look at the organizations that represent similar population that have similar needs, whether it be the disabilities and 7 waivers, or, you've got Kansas for Better Care, KBC, and you've got some other organizations. Let's see, because they have a staff, you saw it. They got a director, executive director. Let's see if we can't do something like that ourselves and start working on the funding to link arms with them and support. I just think that that's what it's going to take. All right, that direct action, mature organization that you can stand up and say, we have 650,000 of us out here, Mr. Senator, Representative, and I think we can speak for 250,000 right now. You want to listen? Well, guess what? Most of your legislators have a mom and a dad, and some of them are in care, or a grandpa or a grandma, and some are in care. So when you start talking issues about care of their own family, and you're in that area, county they represent, yeah, they tend to pay attention. So I would appreciate if you would discuss that and maybe take a look at how we can build that into the future. We've got a great leadership team right now. I think it's time to do that.
Yeah, thanks. Yesterday when Jay and I were over at KDAD's, and said I'm fairly new to the Silverhead legislature, but we have a cubicle in the KDAD's building, and I'd never seen it. And when I got over there, Jay and I found that you couldn't even really get into the cubicle because of all the boxes of records that had been moved down into that cubicle, and the cubicle had been reduced in size by about 2/3. So there was very little room to even move around. So most of our job was just taking out the boxes and whatever we really need to keep. so that we could finally get to where the desk was. And he said that that's not a good sign.
No.
And we need to have a forceful, I would say, presence, because I feel that strongly about what is important to seniors because I are one. But when I was in the Senate, I felt like I represented everyone, and anyone in my district or not had access to my office, and because I like to hear different ideas. Seniors are so important to the state of Kansas. We need to make sure that seniors are cared for and have all the services that are needed at their disposal. And so I'm going to be a little pit bull when it comes to representing this organization. I'm a nice pit bull. I smile first before I bite. So I think that what we need is we need some way to communicate between the State House and me and Jay to figure out when these bills are coming up for committee, when they're going to be heard, so that we can race down here and offer our proponent testimony, which would be our resolutions. And there are ways to do that, but some of them aren't cheap either. There's one service I use that I called after the fact. I said, "This is fun. This is a good little program to keep track of everything." How much it is? It was about $1,000 a year. And I said, "Ooh." Well, it wasn't. It was too rich for my blood, but it might, be something to consider for this organization. It kept us on top of all of the areas that we're interested in, because we just don't have the time to sift through all of the information and get to the stuff that's important to us soon enough that we can have time to react. That's what we could use, and it might be helpful to have an office. I think Kate has it wants to. Yeah.
We're in our 4th office in the last 8 years, I think. And they even tried to kick us out. You all knew about it when we were on, and send us to Jayhawk Area Agency or whatever. But they didn't want to give us free phone and free printing and free computer and free mailing. And so that wasn't going to work for us. And Don contacted some people, and we got an office back. But they keep downsizing. We've gone from nice size to tiny size. Yes, it is. And especially since we were given the Silver-Haired Legislature by an act of the Kansas Legislature. And Don and now Randall will always point that out to them. We're not just some fly-by-night organization that picked itself up on Saturday nights.
But the legislature is not necessarily our friend either.
No.
There have been times during the course of the time we've been in existence that dropping the funding. We're not funded literally by the legislature, but indirectly we have access to revisers and research, which is very expensive. Those resolutions probably cost in the neighborhood of from $10,000 to $15,000. And so it's not cheap to have us. And but we're and then we go over to the state house, and that's not cheap. So we need to make sure that what we do is we're dead serious, and we're going to see the process through. We're going to make sure that the resolutions get all the life we can possibly give them through the legislative process. So with these questions for okay. Some of these are not related to the, maybe this would be better for.
8 more o'clock.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't.
they were more of a specific kind of thing. It's not legislative related, but.
Yeah.
Leonard Schreiber, PSA 10. I don't have my computer with me, it's automatic on there, but one of our Zoom meetings in the past, we had a guy that gave us a website, Kansas Legislature or something. And you can find exactly where each bill is. You can even zoom in on some of the committee meetings. So if you need to know that, somebody here has that information.
Is it Legiscan? Yeah, go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah, we held a couple Zoom trainings. Randall conducted one about the Kansas Legislature website, a website called Legiscan. But then we had one on how to use Zoom. But I think it gets back to what are the needs of the individual legislators that are here. You know, we can do a lot of different things. I had some ideas. One is our method of communication, because, you know, we use email a lot. We have a Facebook presence. We have 2 pages, one that's a group page and then one that's a public page, but not everybody uses Facebook. So right now it seems like it's a little bit hard when we do communicate to know whether everyone is getting the information and, you know, is it being read? So I think increasing our communication effectiveness and just making sure that we're communicating in multiple ways so that everyone is getting the information and acting on it. You know, I know Ross had sent out some surveys, for example, to get input on different things. And then the partnerships, I think that Mr. Schmidt mentioned that, and then our guest speaker also mentioned partnering. That it seems like there's quite a bit of opportunity, whether that's, you know, the next session or activities leading up to that there are other groups that have similar interests as ourselves that we ought to leverage. And then it seems like there's people that want to know more about the legislative process. You know, how do you testify? When do you testify? How do you communicate with your legislators? Things like that. But it gets back to, well, do you want that via email? Do you want to have a Zoom meeting to present that? You know, just, we don't really know, I don't think, how everyone wants to get that kind of information. And then one of my other concerns is we have a lot of slots across the state where we don't actually have someone representing specific county. So if we put our heads together and work towards getting those slots filled, instead of having this many, we could have twice as many people in the room or advocating across the state. Because if you think about a county that doesn't have a representative, they're just kind of out there with no advocate. So,
Good thought, Sharon.
Just to follow up on a couple of her comments. Number one is, I'm a retired member of the military, medical community, and they quickly learned with their legislation for health benefits in the military, you have your military members, is that they reached out and joined forces with all the other veterans groups in the United States. There's probably a couple dozen influential ones, but they have a coalition of veteran benefit organizations that they work with, and all of their ideas and things that go before Congress are common, and each organization carries the same message. And they don't have a lone lobbyist that represents the coalition. Each coalition member is expected to carry that message. But there is a lot of merit to that idea of working with the other medical providers in the state of Kansas, regardless of what they provide. But the second thing was, in response to one of her concerns, is that I think based on my experience, in PS2, we have a wonderful AAA. And the guy that works at desk is willing to do anything for us. But if there's some way we can get information from the state and using the Kansas legislature, find out about bills being heard and debates and so forth, and get that down to the AAA officers and get them out to the PSAs and have the chairman of the PSAs have a common message out to all of their committee members. And then we start calling the senior centers, which I do a lot of. I think that's a great way to communicate. But again, a common thread to get the message out of what we want to try to work on at that particular time.
Now, one thing, yeah, Sherry mentioned that, I think it'd be very, good if we can piggyback on other groups that we have synergy with, and that we could, join forces and, even, AARP, who knows? I've seen those groups, committee meetings and, the State House, so why not? And I think that the more groups that are behind a certain bill increases the chances of that bill moving forward.
Last question.
Last question.
Okay, Dale Anderson and PSA 6. We're out in the boondocks out there. And my area is one that's got, I think, about 18 counties that need representation. But you're also, everybody's paying for their own way to get here, their own way to go to meetings. No reimbursement of any kind. And so that makes it hard for people. That makes it really hard for people to say they'd be interested in stepping in and doing this, but we got one back there from Ulysses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a long way to come.
That's an item that is going to be discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you can, have your voice heard. It's just a matter of sending it in ahead of time of the hearing. There is information that, not all testimony is oral. A lot of it's written as well, and that testimony has the same weight as the oral testimony, spoken testimony as well. So it can be, it doesn't require personal presence. It can happen in a number of ways, but that's true. It is more difficult.
All right.
I don't have a question. I'm from Ulysses, Steve Brown, and I think we need to be respectfully proactive and write our senators, write our representatives, and tell them how we feel, and do it respectfully, but keep doing it until they finally think, I wish he would put email or a Tim.
Correct. Thank you very much. This is really helpful to me, and it's given me some ideas, and we'll take these all your thoughts and comments, and I'll get some more stuff out to you. I'm going to report back about the resolution versus the bill, and how does the resolution fit into a bill, and that kind of thing, just for my own curiosity as well. So thanks for all your help and your input. Great questions, great comments. We probably learned as much in that hour as we've done from an SHL standpoint in a long time. That's really good. So, Thomas has some things that he's going to be bringing up at 4 o'clock. And then, as we just told Gail,